This is a Canadian Politic. Today we're going to look into how the US and Canada has left itself vulnerable to China. It is no secret that an authoritarian regime controls China. So what will this mean if they have monopoly on vital supplies? If you want information on this and more, stay tuned. Hit like, subscribe, and notification bell. Thank you. And we can all agree, antibiotics has made our lives much easier. What would be a life-threatening infection is now just a mere nuisance. It's one of our biggest advances in modern medicine. Could you imagine a country the size of the US having a supply cut off? Well, this is the very thing the US is vulnerable to. No doubt that U.S. officials are worried. They are coming to the grips that this scenario may be a possibility. The reason for this is that the vast majority of key ingredients in drugs that Americans rely on are manufactured abroad. You think that they would be smart enough to diversify their suppliers. Well, if they did this, I would not be making this presentation. And from listening to my intro, you should be able to tell the U.S. has become dependent upon Chinese pharmaceuticals. Considering the U.S. is in a trade war with China and in the midst of a health crisis, China could use this as leverage. I got an article from the CFR that will shine some light on this issue. This vulnerability is very well known within the Trump administration. Gary Kahn, former chief economic advisor to President Trump, he argued against a trade war with China for this very reason. He invoked a Department of Commerce study that found 97% of all antibiotics in the United States came from China. He says, if you're the Chinese and you really want to destroy us, just stop sending us antibiotics. To validate these fears, if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see an influential Chinese economist earlier this year. He suggested that Beijing curb its exports of raw materials for vitamins and antibiotics as a countermeasure in the trade war with the United States. And we even have an article within the New York Times. It likewise validates this, saying Chinese pharmaceutical companies have supplied more than 90% of U.S. antibiotics, vitamin C, ibuprofen, and hydrocortisone, as well as 70% of acetaminophen and 40 to 45% of heparin in recent years. And if you want to see what the Chinese are saying about us, all we have to do is look into the Washington Times. The Chinese state media have raised the specter of using Beijing's pharmaceutical leverage to block critical components and supplies for dependent U.S. drug companies and send America into the hell of a novel coronavirus epidemic. And what is crazy is we see our media outlets and entertainment industries backing down to the Chinese government. It really highlights the economic leverage China possesses. Yet U.S. citizens and Canadians alike are the ones being accused of racism. We can see the same thing is happening on the ground in China, if not worse. I don't agree with racial profiling, but they do have some weird habits, and this infection did in fact originate in China. Nonetheless, in defense of Canadians, there is nothing wrong with criticizing a culture for potentially harmful habits. Next, I'd like to show you an article in the Washington Post. It really does a good job in highlighting the leverage the Chinese Communist Party possesses over American companies. When general manager of the Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey, he posted a pro-Hong Kong tweet that said, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong." This was quickly deleted. and this angered China's communist rulers. The Chinese consulate in Houston declared it was deeply shocked by the Rona's comments and demanded the team correct the error and take immediate concrete measures to eliminate the adverse impact. And pathetically, the league complied. And if we scroll down, we can see the reason why the NBA complied is because there's simply just a lot of money at stake. And the Houston Rockets are in big trouble because the Chinese Basketball Association immediately suspended relations with the Houston Rockets. Sponsors began pulling back from deals. Tencent, the Chinese digital rights holder for the NBA broadcast, dropped the team from streaming. The NBA is big business in China, where 500 million people watched games last season. According to Associated Press, where a new streaming deal alone will generate $1.5 billion for the league over the next 5 years. So we can definitely see a history where China uses economic leverage. I'm telling you about US and US companies, so why is this important to Canadians? Well, we have the same problem. In Canada, you can't get a head of lettuce without its origins written somewhere. However, the pharmaceutical industries, they don't have to live up to the same standard. It is our trust in Health Canada that they oversee the quality and supply. And well, really, they're falling short. And I have a few articles regarding this. And right here I have an article by Global News. It does a good job in outlining exactly what this is going to mean for Canada. And really, this is a global problem. The difference with Canada is we're in a unique situation where we could actually develop our own pharmaceuticals. So we definitely need to steer away from relying on a supplier like China, especially across the ocean. Obviously, during times of disaster, we can really see how vulnerable we really are. China is a global pharmaceutical manufacturer, and professionals are saying pharmaceuticals across the board are at risk. And we can see down here, China does produce 80% of the world's supply of active pharmaceutical ingredients. So obviously, this problem isn't just exclusive to Canada and the United States. This is a global issue as well. And China has a monopoly on the global drug supply. And very few of Canada's drugs are actually made domestically. And this is according to Jacqueline Duffin, a professor at Queen's University. Duffin, who runs a website, CanadaDrugShortage.com, said that many of the raw materials in a drug supply are made in China. Drugs get put together rather like cars. Parts are made all over the world, and drugs are assembled in North America. The raw materials for making those drugs come in a large proportion from China. And the other problem with buying pharmaceutical ingredients from China is they don't have the same standards we employ. For example, China's largest domestic vaccine manufacturer sold at least 250,000 substandard doses of vaccines for diphtheria, tetanus, and whooping cough. Hundreds of thousands of children might have been injected with faulty vaccines. This is because manufacturers are known to violate standards. And another problem that plagues the Canadian healthcare system is drug shortages. This is according to the Canadian Pharmacists Association website. And they're the people I would know. They're the ones that handle these things every day. Drug shortages continue to be a serious concern within the Canadian healthcare system. And just at a glance, 1 in 4 Canadians have either personally experienced or know someone who has experienced a drug shortage in the last 3 years. Most pharmacists are reporting drug shortages, and they have increased in the last 3 to 5 years, with the vast majority saying that they have greatly increased. And this has been an ongoing problem in the last 10 years, and this is according to CanadaDrugShortages.com. And we can really begin to see where Canada is falling short. Not to mention, I can't find word on how we're going to produce more ventilators. This will be a life-saving device in this disaster. According to the numbers provided by Global News, excluding Ontario, there are 2,498 ventilators with 275 on order. Data that's available says we have 5,000 ventilators from the 2008 SARS scare. So just like the US, we have a vulnerable supply of medications while China has this monopoly. We have had problems for years regarding supply and funding. This will obviously not magically disappear and will be a growing problem. Everyone hails the socialized healthcare system, but I fear government is just moving too slow. My hopes are in US private industries who have stepped up to produce ventilators and much needed supplies. This will obviously benefit Canada in the long run. Companies like Tesla, Ford, GM, and GE are among a few. This is why it's important to allow private industries to compete for contracts. This is just like World War II, and they will make the difference.